January 4th, 2006. The Texas Longhorns faced a critical 4th down and 5 play from the USC 8-yard line with only 26 seconds left in the game. The Rose Bowl, and more importantly, the national championship was on the line. Some would say it was the most important play in the history of this storied program.
All the dreams, all the hopes for the national championship come down to this play.
It had been over 35 years since the Horns had won a national championship. Mack Brown arrived on the 40 acres in December of 1997, and in his 8 seasons, he successfully restored the great pride of the Texas football program. Coach Brown, his talented junior quarterback Vince Young, and the rest of the state of Texas stood on the doorstep of a national championship, one that would validate Mack Brown's tenure as a coach and forever cement the football foundation at the University of Texas.
Texas football is one of the greatest things in America. I would say I could not imagine Texas without football.
Football is so big in Texas, and in this state, it does seem that a lot of things are right when football is on top.
When I saw the white helmets and the orange jerseys running on the field with Texas on the front of it, it really touched me.
It was a measuring stick for all the other teams. If you could go out and play well against a good Texas team, you were good.
Texas football is just bigger than life.
And I guess the first sounds that I really listened to were the sounds of the cheers coming from Memorial Stadium.
It was always the program, not only for the state of Texas, but in my mind for the nation.
When I came here, no one knew about Darrell Royal. I'd coached other places. Nobody knew me.
Thank you very much, everyone else that thinks they want me, but if Coach Royal wants me, I'm going to the University of Texas.
College football at the University of Texas began on Thanksgiving Day, 1893, and it was magical from the very beginning.
I think to capture that moment, you have to kind of use your imagination and go back in time and think of taking a train to Dallas to play what was known as the Dallas Football Club, and it was the self-proclaimed champions of Texas. And this small university in Austin, which had only been in existence for 10 years at that point, has dared to challenge this great football program. They had the better of the day, which surprised the Dallas Football Club, took the victory and went home as the champion, and the guys in Dallas were embarrassed and the guys in Austin were champions, and that was the beginning.
The pressure to win was evident, and the Austin faithful expected the best from their football team. Dave Allardyce, one of the great coaches in the early years of Texas football, decided to retire because he couldn't stand the pressure from the Texas fans. A beloved figure in the early years of Texas football was neither a player nor a coach. Doc Henry Reeves came to Texas in the early part of the university's history as something of a water boy, a trainer, and the closest thing to a team doctor that they had at Texas.
It's a phenomenal story, a man who had a tremendous medical knowledge, and you never knew where he got it or where it came from. When Doc Henry died, the Houston Post did a story about it, and it talked about the fact that he was a person who had meant so much to so many of the students at the university, to all of them. But I think it showed that the color of a man's skin had nothing to do with his heart or his ability.
By 1924, Texas had outgrown tiny Clark Field. They needed a big-time football stadium. And probably the most significant move for the Texas Longhorns in the 1920s was the building of Memorial Stadium, erected in honor of the young soldiers who fought in World War I. The construction of the stadium was paid for mostly by students and open to a crowd of 33,000 versus Baylor. It has been their home, and a wonderful home at that, ever since. By the end of the 1936 season, Texas football was still searching for its first national championship and decided to make a bold move in the hiring of its next coach. Dana X. Bible was already one of the legendary coaches in college football, coaching at rival Texas A&M and at Nebraska. The University of Texas made a risky choice and hired Mr. Bible to come to Texas as the coach and athletics director. His $15,000 annual salary was more than the university president made and challenged the governor's salary. Mr. Bible sold the school on his Bible plan to build academic and athletic greatness at the University of Texas.
He wanted the students to get their education, and the Bible plan meant that you had a scholarship, and as long as you were healthy, you kept that scholarship and you got your degree.
And I'd heard a lot of things about Mr. Bible, and so he was anything I wanted in a coach.
He's referred to as Mr. Bible. Very seldom do you hear anyone say Coach Bible. And it was Mr. Bible from his players.
Well, he's very strict. And yeah, no monkey, no funny business at all. It's all business.
With his name and the respect that he garnered throughout the college football world, Bible would begin building his program from the ground up. It was expected that Texas would quickly become a national power, a team to be reckoned with. But it didn't happen immediately.
He came in with such credentials, and yet at the same time, Texas had been so down, it was hard to get the program turned around. Folks used to kid about Allie Bible and the 40 Sieves because his defense seemed to leak all the time.
It wasn't until 1940 that Texas broke through on the national scene and enjoyed one of its best seasons to date. It was only fitting that the upstart Longhorns' coming out party was against their greatest rival, Texas A&M. The Aggies had won the national championship the year before, and most folks thought Texas had no chance to win. Very early in the game, wingback Noble Doss, part of Mr. Bible's first recruiting class, made an over-the-shoulder catch that set up the game's only touchdown.
Is what else called a down and out pass, and we use it a lot during the year, so it was something new. And so I just run the route we always run, down and out. It worked good, real good.
Pete Layton scored on a 1-yard run, and Texas won 7-0, knocking the Aggies out of the Rose Bowl and out of the national championship. More importantly, it established exactly what Mr. Bible had set out to accomplish at UT.
The 7-0 victory became famous, but the catch that Noble Doss made, it was an over-the-shoulder catch, and that picture probably typifies the first 100 years of Texas football more than any other single picture, and it forever will hang in the memory and in the hallways of Longhorn lore.
1 year later, the 1941 version of the Longhorns was poised to be the best Texas team ever, and they set their sights on the Rose Bowl and a national championship. By the middle of November, the team was undefeated, and Life magazine featured the team on its cover. Now, the whole country was watching as this scrappy bunch made a run at Texas football history. Unfortunately, for that particular Longhorn team, their dreams got dashed. Even though they beat the hated Aggies at Kyle Field that season, a loss to TCU and a heartbreaking tie with Baylor thwarted any Rose Bowl and national championship aspirations. The outbreak of World War II meant that most young kids would be off fighting instead of playing football. As the war ended, a new hero emerged on the Texas football scene. After being discharged from the Merchant Marines before the season, Bobby Layne became a Longhorn legend on New Year's Day 1946 in the Cotton Bowl versus Missouri. Layne ran for 3 touchdowns, caught another, threw for 2 more, and for good measure, he kicked 4 extra points. Bobby Layne was the most famous Longhorn athlete of any sport in Texas' first half century. As his All-American career wrapped up, so did Mr. Bible's coaching tenure. UT's football coach would retire from the field after the 1946 season. A decade later, Texas had still not won a national championship. So in 1956, Mr. Bible, who was still the athletics director, picked up his telephone and changed the course of Longhorn history.
One night, I got a very important call from Mr. Bible. I was up in Seattle and coaching the University of Washington, and got this phone call and said, "Hello, Darrell, this is DX Bible." I knew exactly what the call was about, of course.
And Coach Royal put his hand over the mouthpiece of the phone and looked at his wife and said, "Edith, this is it. This is the University of Texas."
I think it was an extremely big reach because I was only 32 at that time and really didn't have that much of impressive of a coaching record.
Darrell K. Royal arrived in Texas in December 1956. He was the youngest coach in college football, and it was his task to carry on the pride of Texas Longhorn football. Coach Royal had gone to the University of Oklahoma, so he was very familiar with the Texas program and its rich history. But when Coach Royal began coaching at Texas, the football team in Austin was far from perfect.
Fact is that it was a day-to-day job, and I was just trying to get things done and handle it from day to day and scratch where it itches and try to take care of the job and improve every day I was here.
Coach Royal not only taught his players the game, he taught them about life, and they carried his message beyond the confines of the football field. He ran a program with honesty and integrity.
So you're a part of a team, and one of the first things that Coach Royal would tell you, if you got to cheat, why do you play? And that's remained with me.
The thing that was the most visionary is when he came in, and after he'd been here for a year or two, and he, I think, was told by the athletic director, Mr. Ali, that he could hire another assistant coach, that he could add an assistant coach. He said, "I would like to add an academic counselor, a brain coach."
Coach Royal was the first coach in the NCAA to hire an academic counselor, Lon Hewitt. And Lon would call you in if your grades were sagging. He wanted to know why. He'd help you with your classes, help you find tutors. Well, it makes perfect sense. And that's the way Darrell was. Darrell coached with and lives with great common sense.
Coach Royal's impact was immediate. The Longhorns went from 1-9 the previous season to 6-3-1 in 1957 and a berth in the Sugar Bowl. He was fond of saying, "Luck is when preparation meets opportunity," and he proved it to be true in his first year in Austin.
I never saw luck go jump on a guy in the shade. You got to get out of the shade and get out in the sun and sweat, work, sacrifice to be able to win.
He was demanding. I mean, you worked, but it was under his eye. And what he wanted, he knew. And you needed to be doing what he wanted. So,
Mr. Bible gave Coach Royal 2 goals when he hired him as the head coach: get the football program back on track and beat rival Oklahoma in the annual Red River Shootout. In his second season in 1958, he accomplished both, and it was all because of the 2-point conversion.
And I'd been pretty vocal that I was opposed to the rule, but And I decided that if we scored first, that we were going to go for the 2. And we luckily did score first and go for the 2. And it turned out to be the margin of victory.
Texas beat Oklahoma 15-14, and that was the first game in college football history in which a 2-point conversion decided a game. The win established Coach Royal as a big-time college football coach and pointed the Longhorns on a path to the national championship.
It was our first victory over Oklahoma in about 8 years or so, and for it to happen in my second year, it gave me a little bit of support and a little bit of uneasiness of how young I was. They kind of forgot about all those things and accepted me as a coach. I thought it was the most important victory of my whole coaching career.
Texas was hungrier than ever for a national championship. And heading into the '63 Red River Shootout, both the Sooners and the Longhorns were unbeaten. Joe Don Looney, the Oklahoma running back, gave the Longhorns all the motivation they would need in this battle, especially Texas defensive stalwart Scott Appleton.
His comment before the ball game was, "Appleton's tough, but he ain't met the Big Red yet."
So when we played that game, it's Oklahoma #1, Texas #2. And I think Joe Don Looney had said a few things about us as to maybe our defense wasn't quite as strong as it should be, and that we probably wouldn't be able to shut him down or whatever.
And it fired us up defensively because they really did tackle him well and try to keep him from getting any yardage.
We took the opening kickoff and we drove 75 or 80 yards and scored on our first drive. And we had done that a good bit that year, but I think that gave us the confidence to know that we could move the ball against Oklahoma. I mean, it was 28-0, I think, before they ever scored, and we took over #1. That's one of the great joys that you have as a player, as a coach, and as a fan and alumni.
The #1 ranked Longhorns were on the verge of their first national championship, and only in-state rival Texas A&M stood in their way. But there was a chance that this Thanksgiving Day tradition would never be played.
I was home dressing to go meet the president and at the airport, and I hadn't tied my tie, but I had it around in my collar. I was listening to the television, and they said President Kennedy had been shot.
And the '63 team was faced with a real dilemma because 6 days after that, Texas was supposed to play in College Station in the last game of the season with the national championship on the line.
The schools decided to play the game, and with the entire nation in mourning, Texas continued its quest for their first ever national championship. Trailing late in the game, UT needed a miracle to win.
We get another opportunity, and then one of their linebackers, I believe it was, intercepted the ball. Well, probably if he falls down, I don't know if we're going to have another opportunity to get the ball to score.
And of all things, they tried to lateral it, and the lateral was fumbled.
Well, we now get the ball back with a first down. And then we go down, and Hicks Green made a tremendous catch from Tommy Wade, and we go down and get on and able to win the game and win the national championship.
There's no way that we could have won that game because we took the ball from that point in for a touchdown, and had they intercepted the ball and just fallen to the ground, the game was over. But I'm always thankful that the guy tried a lateral.
The #1 ranked Longhorns were declared the national champions after that game. That doesn't sit well with the second-ranked Navy midshipmen, led by Heisman Trophy winner Roger Staubach, who were getting ready to take on Texas in the Cotton Bowl. Even though Texas had already won the national championship, the lure of an undefeated season took center stage. The Longhorn defense contained Staubach throughout the game. The Longhorns triumphed 28-6, completing an undefeated national championship season.
Had we not have won that thing in '63, you know, we may say, well, yeah, they win a lot of games, but they can't win that national championship. Winning that was the last hurdle to get up that we felt like helped build this program from that point on.
After winning the national title, the Longhorns came back to the pack in the next couple of years, even with a dominating defense led by All-American Tommy Novus. 3 straight 6-4 seasons followed, and Coach Royal sought to change his sputtering offensive approach in 1968 with a spectacular recruiting class that would later become known as the Wooster Crowd, named for monster fullback Steve Wooster. Legend has it that Coach Royal and assistant coach Emory Bellard had to look no further than the dinner table for the answer.
You know, Edith, I have an idea.
The wishbone offense, a revolutionary formation that allowed the Longhorns to play 4 players in the backfield, was born.
Because we had 2 outstanding halfbacks, Jim Bertelsen and Ted Coy, and both of them deserved to be in there playing. And then, of course, we had Wooster in the middle at fullback.
The Longhorns lost the first game that season and tied the second. Coach Royal then made a change at quarterback and inserted untested underclassman James Street to run the wishbone.
It was a big move, but I found that our quarterback was guessing on the wishbone.
Well, without the wishbone, I'm not sure I'd ever been the starting quarterback at the University of Texas. It kind of fit my style. I was pretty quick and could operate behind the line of scrimmage.
James Street brought that intangible to a team. He didn't have great gifts as far as his running ability. He wasn't the best passer that you ever saw. All he did was win, and he did that really well.
Of course, Street came in as a starting quarterback in the wishbone, and he started 20 games, and we won 20.
Street and the wishbone were rolling and became the stuff of legend as the 1968 Longhorns marched through the season, finishing 9-1-1. Heading into 1969, their sights were set on another national title, as no team in the country could slow down the wishbone attack.
It fit our style. It worked perfectly. The other teams had not learned how to defense it, run properly. No matter what they did, they made a mistake. It made a lot of sense. You put a lot of pressure on the defensive players to be in the right place and play their position and stay at home. Anybody made a mistake, we got them.
The 1969 season was the 100th anniversary of college football in the country. And the matchup in Fayetteville between the #1 ranked Longhorns and the #2 ranked Arkansas Razorbacks would be billed the game of the century. President Richard Nixon was on hand and would present a presidential plaque after the game to the national champion.
The whole country became interested in it. More than 20 million people saw the game on television. It was one of the most watched games in its time.
Well, I'll tell you, that was a unique experience, a unique ball game, a unique situation. Everything about it was unique, and the stakes were extremely high. And it was the national championship was on the line, and every fan, including the presidents, a couple of them were there, were excited about that ball game. Bad weather, and no one noticed.
Texas found themselves down 14-8 in the second half, and Arkansas was looking for more. But it was defensive back Freddie Steinmark's mistake that saved the game for the Longhorns.
he was at safety, and a receiver was going by him, and he tackled him, which of course pass interference was called, but that was better than a touchdown. Had they scored, they'd have been the winner.
3 plays later, the Razorbacks threw an interception in the end zone, and now Texas had one more chance for a miracle. The Hog defense was up to the task, and the Longhorns found themselves in a 4th and 3 situation with the national championship on the line.
And Street, James Street, the quarterback, goes back to the coach and says, timeout. What are we going to do, Coach? He said, I want you to pass. He said, sir, I want you to pass. Darrell didn't pass very much. And he said, yes, sir, went back out in the field.
James trotted out about the hash mark, and he turned around and came back, and he said, Coach, are you sure? I said, yeah, because everybody thought we'd be running the option play.
I want you to pass, damn it.
I just felt like it was time to gamble. We were behind, and it was time to go for all the marbles and throw the deep pass to Peschel.
Reed has it, fakes the handoff. He's going to pass, he's throwing the bomb. He's looking for Peschel. Peschel has it. Peschel is down on the 13-yard line of Arkansas. How about that one? 4 down and 2 to go. They throw the bomb on a flag pattern to Randy Peschel, who catches it over his shoulder.
Probably the most dramatic pass of his, I know it was, of his career.
In the game of the century, Street to Peschel was the pass of the century. Texas wound up on the Arkansas 13-yard line, and 2 plays later, Jim Bertelsen ran the Longhorns to the victory of the century.
So we were a total team and played as a team, and I think that's what Coach Royal's big on. That both sides of the ball had to play equally well. We were at the right place at the right time. We got it done.
After the game, President Nixon and the Secret Service commandeered the Texas locker room to present the national championship plaque to the Texas Longhorns.
It was just a happiness I never observed before. It was such a surprise and such a wonderful victory.
It was a very special window of time in Texas football because Royal had been up in the early 60s, had gone through that valley, and now was national champion. And Texas was on top of the world because so many people saw that game and knew so much about it.
Just 3 days after the national championship victory, Freddie Steinmark was diagnosed with a massive tumor on his hip.
He certainly didn't know he had cancer, and the bone almost eaten out in his leg. And they flew him down to Houston, and a few days later they amputated his leg.
Freddie was a Catholic, and he wanted so badly to play against Notre Dame. He was excited when he learned that the Irish, for the very first time since the Four Horsemen, were going to come to the Cotton Bowl and play Texas. So on January 1, 1970, when Freddie Steinmark came down the tunnel on his crutches 3 weeks after he'd had that leg removed, and he stood on the sideline with those crutches the entire ball game and cheered his Longhorns to victory.
The inspiration that Freddie Steinmark gave to the Longhorns helped beat Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl to complete the second undefeated national championship for Texas. Coach Royal gave the game ball to Steinmark.
I tell you how proud I am of you. It'd be kind of, an understatement. Afraid if I talk too damn long, I'm going to choke up. But we've got a guy that we love a lot. Ready? Here it is for you.
A year and a half later, in June of 1971, Freddie Steinmark lost his battle to cancer.
But Freddie was one of those guys, just the Lord put him in the right place at the right time, and never complained, never woe is me, and even to the very end, he was upbeat and happy, and that's the way we all remember Freddie.
The 1970 Longhorn team picked up right where they left off from the national championship season. Eddie Phillips guided the Wishbone to perfection as Texas won the first 2 games of the season. But Pac-8 powerhouse UCLA came down to Austin and put the champs on the ropes, leading 17-13 with 12 seconds left in the game. It would be another miracle comeback at Memorial Stadium.
Phillips fakes the option, throws to Spire, and the 2 safeties for UCLA go for the interception. Well, they underplayed. I think they misplayed Spire's speed. They go for the interception. They knock each other down. Spire catches it, runs for a touchdown, and that preserved that long winning game streak.
And the 70 team, believe it or not, probably was more talented. The problem that we had with it late in the season, we got some injuries. That's the difference.
Injuries notwithstanding, the Texas winning streak reached an incredible 30 games. Even with a loss to Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl, the Longhorns still captured back-to-back national championships. With this 3rd national championship under his belt, Darrell Royal firmly established himself as the greatest coach in Texas football history. In 1970, defensive lineman Julius Whittier became the first African-American athlete to earn a varsity football letter at the University of Texas. It was an historic moment.
And it took a lot of courage for Julius, I'm sure, to say, I'm going to be the first black African-American player on that team.
It was a huge deal, and we didn't even know it. We just saw a good defensive end.
Changed the outlook of what we look at and the things that were wrong with the system before that. I think that you had to have special people to be able to do that.
On the West Coast, there was players out there black African-American players out there who was playing, that played extremely well, and they was winning championships.
Knew it was the right thing to do, and it was long overdue, as a matter of fact.
Julius Whittier's courage made it possible for other great African-American athletes to come to Texas, like running back Roosevelt Leaks, who became the team's first African-American All-American.
As myself being one of the early black players here at the university, it was always a question about whether I could play. I know I could play, but would I get an opportunity to play? That's what other coaches have told me around the country, that I would not get an opportunity to play when I was being recruited.
He was probably the first highly recruited player to turn down a lot of other teams and come to Texas, which gave him an extra star on his shoulder pads. I mean, he was very courageous to do that, and then set the bar up there pretty high.
Coach Royal gave me an opportunity to show that I could be somebody if I wanted to be somebody. It took hard work to do. That's what happened, and I'm very proud of that.
Well, Roosevelt was fast and strong and smart, and Rosie would run over you or run past you, and before you'd ever know it. I mean, it was gone. It was over. He was a flash.
I mean, he had a game in the Cotton Bowl against SMU that's just hard to fathom. He was not only outran people, carrying people for 342 yards. I remember it like it was yesterday.
My oldest sister made the statement, "Earl, you think you can play football, huh? Everybody think you're so good. You see that black guy right there in that white uniform? He's finna run for 300 yards in one football game." And I said, "Sure." And I kind of sit there and watched, and that was Roosevelt Leaks.
Julius Whittier opened the door for Roosevelt Leaks, who in turn opened it for Tyler's Earl Christian Campbell, the greatest running back in Texas football history.
I knew nothing. I knew none of the history. I knew nothing about this university at all.
It was obvious, when you watch him, you didn't have to watch much film on him. He was one of those 10-footers. Watch about 10 feet of film on him and it's over. You got it. And he was so fun to watch.
He had power, he had speed, and he had a great deal of tenacity.
We knew he was a great player, but we didn't know how great. I remember the first practice that Earl Campbell had, and I was just in awe at how quick he got off with the ball and how much speed he had.
Earl has always had a quiet wisdom about it. Earl was like an older man. He was like a senior when he came in as a freshman. They'd put him anywhere they needed him, and he's ready to line up and play. Earl was so fast in the first 10 yards coming out of the blocks, and he was so strong. And so Darrell wanted to work him into the game, and so he put him on the punt block team. And so Earl lined up next to me on the punt block team. And we had the block on against Arkansas. And I think Earl almost beat the ball to the punter. And obviously he blocked that ball, and I was a step or two behind him. and the ball landed in my hands, and that was my one and only touchdown for my college career. But thanks to Earl Campbell.
Earl Campbell gained over 900 yards in his freshman year and followed that up with an All-American sophomore season, totaling over 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns. That 1975 season was a breakout year for the Tyler Rose.
I don't think I've ever seen a better running back. I've just never seen anyone that could make a 6-yard run exciting and have that many people miss him and then break away and outrun everybody for a touchdown.
Injuries marred Campbell's junior year, and toward the end of the 1976 season, rumblings began that Darrell Royal would step down as the Texas football coach.
I had learned that climbing is easier than maintaining. Once you get to a certain peak and you keep at that level, now that's a strain. I never wanted to stay in the coaching profession until people wanted me to leave. I just felt like it was a good time to step aside.
The Longhorns sent out Coach Royal in style, beating Arkansas 29-12. It's only fitting that the greatest coach in Texas football history exited with a win against one of the school's biggest rivals. So at age 52, after amassing 11 conference championships, 3 national championships, and 167 wins, Darrell K. Royal hung up his coaching reins and was carried into the sunset.
It's amazing to say, but we kind of got to be like father and son. I know him and I knew it. And I could tell kind of at the end of his career that some of the other guys had kind of picked up on it. And they would kind of joke about it when Coach Royal would go back there with the rest of the coaches. Oh, Coach Royal let you do anything, Earl. I said, no, man, he coached me just like he coached you. He's a good guy, go talk to him.
And at that point in his life, he just decided that then was the time. And he never looked back.
I thought, too, that ought not to leave the cupboard bare when you left. Leave something for the next guy to work with.
That next guy was former Longhorn assistant Fred Akers, who promptly ditched the wishbone offense for the I formation, better suited for the dominant running attack of a now healthy Earl Campbell.
And that's the biggest reason we added the I. He needed to have a chance to handle the football in every way you can handle it. We wanted to hand it to him, pitch it to him, throw it to him. He was going to get the football. And we changed Earl physically a little bit.
He said, I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to change this thing out. He took me to the top of the stadium. He said, you're going to go down there and you're going to work out with that trainer, Frank Medina, in the mornings. About 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning before you go to class. And you're going to get down to 225 pounds. And you're going to be the guy that has to run the ball maybe 25 or 30 times. So come on, let's get to work.
Campbell came to camp next season 25 pounds lighter, and the leaner, more agile back was touted as one of the favorites for the Heisman Trophy. The 1977 Longhorns were reinvigorated, led by Campbell and third-string quarterback Randy McEachern on offense, and Outland Trophy winner Brad Shearer on defense. Texas went undefeated in the regular season and was ranked #1 in the country. The Tiger Rose led the nation in rushing and scoring, running for over 1,700 yards and 19 touchdowns. Campbell was the front-runner for UT's first ever Heisman Trophy, but needed a big game in the season finale versus Texas A&M to lock it up.
By this time, I understand what the Heisman is, because of that guy in Dallas named Tony Dorsett was the year before me. Coach Akers says, you know, you give me anything over 200 yards, you win the Heisman Trophy. Sure enough, God blessed me and our team, and that's what we did.
Winning the Heisman was an incredible accomplishment for Campbell, but an undefeated season and a national championship were at the top of the list for the Longhorns and their first-year head coach. But Joe Montana and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish would stand in their way.
And we played Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl, and they just really, we couldn't stop them defensively. We did not do a good job defensively of slowing them down. And they lined up on Earl and did a good job of stopping Earl.
Notre Dame, with another quarterback named Joe Montana, pulled out a victory and beat Texas and ended what was Akers' dream season in his very first year, when it appeared a national championship was easily within reach.
Akers followed the spectacular start in '77 with 9 straight winning seasons and 9 consecutive bowl berths. In 1983, Akers had the Horns in the hunt for another national title, going undefeated in the regular season before losing to Georgia 10-9 in the Cotton Bowl. Despite posting 66 wins in his first 7 years, Akers never totally endeared himself to the Longhorn faithful and concluded his coaching career in Austin after the 1986 season.
And it is hard to follow a legend, and he tried, and he did everything he could, and he was also heading into an era in the Southwest Conference where there was an awful lot of turmoil.
So it was a tough time for the Southwest Conference. It was a tough time for Texas, and the program was, we were having trouble recruiting kids, and our program was headed down.
So Texas went looking for a new coach and found one within the Longhorn family. Veteran assistant and former Longhorn player David McWilliams seemed the perfect choice to lead the team. Immediately, his homespun nature reminded people of Coach Darrell Royal, and the Texas football community had high hopes.
David McWilliams brought everything to Texas that the Longhorns thought they wanted. He brought the tradition. He brought the history. They wanted him to be another Darrell Royal.
I really didn't think that Texas would be interested in me because I'd only been a head coach for 1 year. You know, he said, I think Texas needs you, and I think you're the one that can come back here and get it done. But I kind of knew coming in what it was going to be, and that it would be tough.
It was tough, very tough. McWilliams suffered losing seasons in 2 of his first 3 years.
88, we didn't play well at all. 89, we didn't play well at all. In 89, several of the seniors came and talked to me, the seniors to be, the Cashes, and said, you know, Coach, we got to turn this around.
In 1990, they nearly did. Texas opened up with an unexpected win over nationally ranked Penn State, and the Longhorns used that momentum and their Shock the Nation tour to win 10 games that season. They were beaten badly by Miami in the Cotton Bowl 46-3, and the program never recovered.
The issues with David started was the Miami game in the Cotton Bowl where he struggled with that.
Well, you know, after the 90 season, I really thought we were kind of on our way. I mean, that we had a chance to then finally get back to where Texas should be.
The Horns looked forward to the 1991 season with anticipation. There was even talk of gunning for a national championship. But after winning only 5 games, a disappointed David McWilliams decided to step down.
It was more of, this is my school, and hey, I'm not getting Texas back to those national rankings like they should be. And as much as I hate to do it, it's time for me to step down and let someone else come in.
Not since Coach Royal in 1956 and Mr. Bible before him had the University of Texas ventured as far afield as they did to find John Mackovic in 1992. Known for his wide-open offense, Mackovic looked to bolster the spirit of the proud Texas tradition.
As a coach, Coach Mackovic is a professor. You know, he's a good offensive mind. He has a great offensive scheme, and he kind of plugs players into his system.
Determined to carve his own legacy, Mackovic steadily rebuilt the UT program. It made its most dramatic mark in 1994, when redshirt freshman James Brown exploded off the bench to start in Dallas against Oklahoma.
James Brown, the Texas quarterback, gets the snap, and now it's bootleg, and he will run. He will throw instead, downfield, complete at the 35-yard line for the first down. James Brown not only fooled me, but he also fooled the Oklahoma defense.
We went through the pre-game drills and everything, came back in, said the prayer, and Coach Mackovic was like, well, y'all, James is going to be starting this week.
Out of all games at his initiation to Texas football and college football was against OU. And, you know, as a freshman, the kid comes in and get it done.
James Brown, quick drop, looking toward the end zone. Now he will run. He's got plenty of room. 5-yard line, goal line, touchdown, James Brown. 9-yard touchdown run by James Brown. And for the first time this afternoon, the Texas Longhorns take the lead.
Texas beat Oklahoma and ended the '94 campaign with 3 straight victories, including a 35-31 win over North Carolina in the Sun Bowl, the first Texas Bowl triumph in 13 years.
James Brown revitalized Texas football, put us back on the map, put us back in the right direction.
After a 10-2-1 season in 1995, Longhorn football seemed to be headed in the right direction. The same could not be said for their longtime home, the Southwest Conference.
As much as we all love the Southwest Conference, it absolutely was doing nothing for Texas. And the Texas football, Texas sports were laying dormant or going downhill because we couldn't keep Texas kids in Texas.
The Southwest Conference basically was doomed. But it was also true that the Big 8 was doomed. The two conferences needed something to bring them together so that they could put the power of the Midwest and the Southwest together and therefore be a player at the television table and be a player at the national level as far as college football is concerned.
The Midwest and the Southwest joined to create a powerful new super conference, and the Big 12 immediately signed the biggest television deal in college sports history. The 1996 season was also the year that Memorial Stadium was renamed Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium in honor of the greatest coach in Texas football history.
I was asked to, by the president, Bill Cunningham, if he and athletic director could come out and visit with me at the house. I thought, well, they're wanting to take me off the payroll, and I'm going to make it as easy for them as I can. I'm not going to let them explain how they feel. I'm going to just say, it's fine, I accept it, no problem. Well, they come in and said, we've decided to name the stadium after you. And I just sat there dumbfounded. And President Cunningham said, well, do you accept it? You've got to accept it. I said, no, yes, I was just stunned. I thought you were here for a different reason. So that was quite a thrill. To be honored by having a name on the stadium, and you've been a coach, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, how much I've enjoyed it. When they have a recognition of your career, that is really special.
Texas entered that inaugural Big 12 season with its first preseason top 10 ranking since 1984. After 7 games, UT had won but 3 games. With the dogged determination of a true Texas Longhorn, Mackovic's squad rallied to take 5 straight and beat the heavily favored defending national champion Nebraska Cornhuskers 37-27 in the Big 12 Conference Championship.
Handed off Holmes. Good block. 10-5. Touchdown! Touchdown Longhorns. Daniel with a huge block. Whoa! Do you believe it? It is 36-27, and we are witnessing, friends, a huge upset.
The glory of that victory didn't last long. In 1997, Texas was routed by UCLA 66-3 in the second game of the season.
Cade McNown turns, fakes the handoff. He will throw to the end zone, wide open, the tight end, touchdown. Mike Grieb catches the 1-yard touchdown pass from Cade McNown, and the Bruins now lead at 23-0.
And this crowd of 75,000 plus just absolutely stunned.
Texas football was in trouble again.
Quick drop by Cherry, looking right, throwing right, and this pass is picked off at the 35-30, 25-20, 15-10, touchdown. UCLA's Damian Allen returns the interception for a 40-yard touchdown.
And it just gets worse.
The 1997 season ended at 4-7. It matched the worst record for a UT team since 1956. Mackovic was relieved of his coaching duties, which would signal the 3rd coaching change in 11 years.
The eras of Texas football since Darrell Royal had gone through Fred Akers and David McWilliams and John Mackovic, and each in their time had a very special part and some very special moments. But at the end of the 1997 season, Texas decided again it was time to go in a new direction.
One of the things that we did with that committee was to establish our own criteria. We took all those resumes and set them aside. And we said, let's start with our criteria. What do we want? And we designed this bionic coach that none of us really had hopes of finding, but we were going to try to get as close as we could. Turns out he was coaching at North Carolina, Mack Brown.
In December of 1997, 46-year-old Mack Brown came to Austin, and before a statewide audience was announced as the head football coach.
I think we can do that a little bit to start it with, huh? We go to a press conference that is full in the Irwin Center, and that's when Sally looked at me and said, "Sweetie, this is different." Because we had about 5 or 6 media types at our press conference in Chapel Hill in '88, and this one was on TV and radio statewide, and we knew that things were different from that moment forth. We're really excited to be here. You go back and as a young guy, when you're growing up and your granddad's the winningest high school football coach in Tennessee history, your dad's a player and a superintendent, and you were raised in a family that was coaching. And at that time, you started looking at guys that you wanted to be like. And obviously, at that time, Bear Bryant was really important. At that time, Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler, a lot of those names. And one of the names as a young coach that I looked at was Darrell Royal.
He came in at a time that we needed him to come in and do the things that he's done and bring back former players. Smart guy. I mean, he came in and grabbed Coach Royal.
The first day I was here, Coach Royal said, you need to call Joe Jamel because the field is named after Joe. And you need to call Eddie Joseph, who's the head of the High School Coaches Association, and ask him if you can be working with the high school coaches in this state. And I said, Coach, I don't have the number. And he said, 476. So he gave me both numbers, and I called both immediately before the press conference. And more than that, on days where I've asked questions about, did you ever do this? I'm confused with this. How do you think this will fit in this state? He has been more than willing to say, I wouldn't do that. Here's what I think.
He makes me feel welcome at any time. They know we're all on the same side, and but they make an old coach feel good.
When Mack Brown came to town, he had the complete support of Coach Royal, which if Coach Royal likes you and respects you, this is the real deal. And Mack just fit right in. It was like he was supposed to be here.
Mack knew that in order to bring all the pieces back together, that we were going to need Coach Royal, that we were going to need the high school coaches, that we were going to need the fan base and the alumni. And so he reached out immediately.
Cavill goes in motion. Handoff, Williams up the middle, running for yardage. He's at the 50, he's at the 40, he's at the 30, he's at the 20, and he cuts back at the 10, 5, dives to the end zone, touchdown Texas. Ricky Williams has the record, and he has a touchdown for the Longhorns.
Mack Brown won 9 games his first season in Austin, mostly with the help of All-American running back Ricky Williams, who finished that year with a Texas record, 2,124 yards, the 5th best in NCAA history.
Whenever he touched the ball, he was trying to score every time. I'd never really seen that from somebody in college like that, up close and personal. But every time he touched the ball, he was going to the end zone. And I mean, he went off. So I was like, this guy's pretty good, man.
And I've never been around a back that got stronger and stronger as the game went on as Ricky did. And he wanted the ball in the fourth quarter. He wanted to take the game over, and that's what he did for us.
In 1998, Ricky Williams followed the giant footsteps of Earl Campbell and became only the 2nd Longhorn to win the Heisman Trophy.
That first year got everybody excited about what could come from there, and the recruiting classes built from there, and they had successful season after successful season.
And began a string of never having fewer than 9 wins in his time at Texas. And he just kept doing it right.
Mack Brown through the past years, the same thing. We're getting close, we're getting close, we're getting close. But then it's like, well, he can't win the national championship.
We were winning 9, 9, 9, and then we got 11, 11, 10. In 2001, we had a chance to play Miami for the national championship, and we lose by 2 to a really good Colorado team. So our expectation had kind of hit a watershed that we were a 9, 10, 11 win team, but we hadn't won a national championship in 30-something years. That's what we want, you know, that's what everybody was talking about. So our players were always being asked about the games that we had not won. What about Oklahoma? What about the national championship? Nothing about the 10, 11 wins consistently. So we were looking at being the most consistent team in college football over the last 5, 6 years, and absolutely no credit for it because we hadn't finished it. And we felt like the 2004 game with Michigan was a huge step.
This whole year has been about team. The dedication today is to you and your teammates. Take care of the ball, knock the ball loose, play great in the kicking game. Everything else from last season, this season, building up to this one. Now, let's go.
And on January 1st, 2005, the 10-1 Texas Longhorns made their first ever trip to the Rose Bowl against the Michigan Wolverines.
To get into the Rose Bowl after the 2004 season was one of the great opportunities for Texas football.
So a moment that I cherish for the rest of my life. First BCS, I'm playing a great school with them.
And then to note that Texas and Michigan in these 2 storied programs had never played each other. That was stunning to think in that in the history of the 2 great programs. It was a great experience.
This great experience turned into a great football game as these 2 historic teams battled all the way to the end. A late Michigan field goal put the Wolverines up 37-35. It was sophomore quarterback Vince Young who led the Longhorn drive that set up a game-winning field goal attempt.
And then, of course, there's Dusty Mangum at the end of it. Michigan used 3 timeouts to freeze Dusty during that whole thing. They used all 3 of their timeouts, and during that time, Mac walked out there and was laughing, and Dusty was kind of laughing about this. Can you believe this? And Mac was like, you know, isn't this great? You get to be a hero. You get to kick this field goal.
And then he hit it.
37 yards to win the Rose Bowl. Flash bulbs are popping. Here's the snap and the hold. 37-yard field goal is good! It's good! The Texas Longhorns have won the Rose Bowl! Dusty Mangum for the Texas Longhorns. They win it 38-37.
I mean, if he don't hit it, just knowing that we did our best as a team.
But he comes on and bends that one in there from 37 yards out to win it, and he becomes an instant legend afterwards for them winning the Rose Bowl.
But the Michigan win validated Texas, and it validated Mack Brown's program. Because after all the years that Texas had struggled to get back to the national scene, now there it was, in that venue, winning that game against that opponent. And suddenly now Texas had reclaimed respect.
You clutch, baby, you clutch.
After beating Michigan, it was like the whole place was on fire and knew that now we're there. We've got a chance now to compete for the national championship every year, not just this year. And I even caution people that would say, this is your year. No, that means we don't have next year. We don't have the next year at Texas. It should be our year every year.
The 2005 season was one team, singularly focused, with only one goal: win the national championship. The second game of the season on the road at Ohio State would be the Longhorns' biggest challenge all year.
Going into that horseshoe and playing there in that stadium was another opportunity for Texas.
To play a team that has a lot of tradition, you know, coming in from a team who has a lot of tradition, you know, we felt like that was a moment that we could be better than any other team that ever come through Texas.
I think that game was just a test, a big test. It was like a midterm test.
And then ultimately, it's Vince with just over 5 minutes to go. He brings it down, he finds Limas Sweed.
Back to pass, looking with a lot of time, lofts it in the corner, it's caught! It's a touchdown for Texas! What a catch by Limas Sweed!
I mean, a lot of different things went on in that ball game, but we just kept believing in each other. I think it defined us as a team, who we are, of what we can do.
And those are the type games you have to win them all. And Ohio State might very well have won it all if they had beaten us that night, because they were definitely one of the best teams in the country.
And we didn't kill Ohio State, but we beat them up there in a really good football game. And I think then you just saw that chemistry of, you know, I think we can believe and we can live this dream.
2005 proved to be a dream season for the Texas Longhorns, as the boys from Austin dominated their opponents like no UT team in history. And this Texas bunch was determined to finish it, win their first national title in 35 years. The USC-Texas matchup in the Rose Bowl had been hyped since the college football season began. And this battle between the nation's top two teams was the most anticipated national championship game in recent memory. The Trojans were looking for their third straight national championship, riding an incredible 34-game winning streak. Led by 2005 Heisman Trophy winning running back Reggie Bush and Southpaw quarterback Matt Leinart, who had won the Heisman the year before, most thought that USC would roll all over Texas.
These guys heard all of that, and they heard it for a month leading up to the game itself, and I think it helped serve to motivate them.
We talked about Troy and the Trojan horse and slipping in at night and keeping your mouth shut, and then we talked about the quote, walk softly and carry a big stick. We're going to let them get all the publicity and feel very good about themselves. We're going to slip in that wooden horse. We're going to keep our mouth shut. We're going to be at their place. We got absolutely no chance to win, and then we're going to win.
I mean, I had just lost the Heisman for one, and then they gave it to USC, so it's pretty much like that whole year they was trying to give USC everything. And I just kept looking back at my teammates knowing that I wanted to bring that trophy home back to Texas.
The USC-Texas game lived up to the hype from the start.
Good evening, everybody. From the Arroyo Seco, at the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains here in Pasadena, California, It's the 92nd Rose Bowl game.
And it was the Longhorns who surprisingly held a 16-10 lead heading into halftime.
15, 10, 5, touchdown Texas. Ramon Taylor up the middle and then outside. RT for 30 and the TD.
Yes. How much fun is this? Now, all the talk's gone, all the stuff's gone.
The fun was only just beginning for both teams.
Young to midfield. He breaks loose down the sideline. Gets to the 30 and inside the 25 and down to the 20.
I remember turning to Keith Moreland in the booth after a touchdown, taking the headset off and said, "What a fantastic game this is." That was at 24-23. That was long before the rest of what happened. And it was punch, counter, punch.
Play action, back to throw, deep over the middle. That ball caught by Jarrett. Inside the 10 to the goal line. Touchdown, Southern California. What a
USC scored 28 points in the second half, taking a 12-point lead, 38-26, with just over 6 minutes to play.
I never thought that we would lose the game. And I knew, as our staff knew, it was a huge drive when you're down by 12 with 6:32 left. You have to score, and you don't need threes. So we were so good at no huddle all year. We had 4 downs to score, and we weren't going to punt. We were going to get our 4 downs. So we told the guys, we're going to score and get right back in the middle of this thing. So keep your mouth shut and go back to work. I think we scored in 6 plays.
wide left, rolling left. Young looks to throw. Now darts back to the right side. He's got running room. Vince pumps to the 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown Texas. Vince Young working his magic yet again.
And then we had to challenge the defense the same way. One stop. They are great. We weren't going to stop them consistently through the night. They were going to make their plays. Pat Matt on the head when he makes a good throw, he's a good player. Reggie Bush is hard to tackle. When he makes it, if you can grab him, grab him. But when he makes a good play, say good play. But we got to make one stop. You make a stop, we're going to win the national championship.
2:13 to go. Leinart under center. He'll hand off to White. He didn't get it. The Longhorns stop it at the 44-yard line. Texas is held, and the Longhorns take over at the Texas 44. 2:09 remaining in the ball game. They'll extend the chains, and the Longhorns will get it back.
Vince Young and Texas had the opportunity. A football game, a program, a state's pride rested on the shoulders of number 10. It would take one last miracle. It was 26 seconds to a national title. It was 4th and 5.
4th down and 5. Texas at the USC 8. 3 wide receivers. Young from the shotgun. Back to throw. Vince looks under pressure. He'll tuck it in and run. Vince to the 5. Young. Touchdown Texas. Touchdown Vince Young. He's done it again. Vince Young has given the Longhorns the lead with 19 seconds to play in the game.
And finally, Vince Young on 4th and 5 became a legend like those before him. Bobby Lane, Street to Peschel, the tide arose, and now Vince Young. Texas beat USC 41-38 for the first time in 35 years. Texas finally finished it and was again national champions.
Just to show it's been a long time since the University of Texas did it, and we can honestly say that myself and the guys who were part of the team, we can honestly say that we did that.
For me, it was like, it's unbelievable. I get to live the '69 game all over.
35 years is a long time to wait. It was a moment in the history of Texas football and this university that, I mean, people will talk about forever.
It was just great to go witness the game and then ride with the players and the coaches back home.
Since we've won the game, I've never, ever seen a group embrace winning better. So for all of the heartbreak they took in what they thought were tragic losses, they have embraced this game. I've seen elderly men cry. Everywhere I go, people are saying, thank you for bringing it home. Thank you, Coach. It's the most unbelievable things I've ever had in my life. So I think they really mean it, and that's the good thing. If you're going to have the bad days where they're so disappointed and so proud, but then angry after a loss, good for them that they're so excited when they won it all.
I thank y'all, Texas, for letting me come be a part of y'all fraternity. Welcome.